Ladies and gentlemen of the Roosevelt County, New Mexico's municipal court system, we have come here today, as per your request, to discuss our proposed solutions to a serious problem in this county. That is to say, the lack of a problem-solving drug court. Now, as many of you know, these problem-solving drug courts are specialized programs designed to not only help drug and alcohol-addicted offenders avoid incarceration, which can be expensive to the state, but also treat their drug addiction, thereby lowering their odds of reoffense and rearrest, and lowering the monetary costs associated with incarcerating and treating them after they are arrested. Now, in New Mexico and nationwide, these programs have been known to have a very strong record of success and reduce by a significant amount the rate of recidivism among participants when compared to traditional routes of probation and incarceration. And yet, despite this record of success and the monetary savings associated with it, Roosevelt County does not yet have a problem-solving drug court program, and so our solution is relatively straightforward. Establish a drug court program in Roosevelt County, New Mexico. Now I'd like to briefly discuss the current situation with regards to drug courts and their funding in New Mexico. As we all know, gas prices both in New Mexico and nationwide have taken a sharp drop recently. This has resulted in a drastic reduction in funds that generally come from gas taxes. As a result, the New Mexico legislature are trying to find a way to restructure the state budget. Susana Martinez, for her part, has put forth a budget proposal that would include a $1.1 million cut in funding to the drug courts throughout New Mexico. According to several reports, including an article by Peters, this would result in roughly 300 fewer people being treated by the drug court programs in New Mexico. This could mean 300 individuals and up to 300 families who lose a chance to be saved from the damages caused by addiction. Now, the New Mexico Supreme Courts, for their part, have suggested a $1.5 million raise in funds to these drug court programs. Now, this should be considered significant to residents of Roosevelt County because among counties its size, Roosevelt has one of the highest rates of property theft reported in New Mexico. According to FBI crime data pulled from recordspedia.com, roughly 250 property theft crimes are reported per 1,000 citizens in Roosevelt County. Now, the Bureau of Justice has released a statement saying that property crimes show a high rate of relation to drug use within the area in which crimes are committed. Therefore, it stands to reason that Roosevelt County could benefit greatly from the establishment of a problem-solving drug court. Bearing this in mind, I'd like to move forward and discuss our project plan in detail. The project has 4 basic steps. The first being to raise public support for the budget increase for the New Mexico drug court programs. The second step would be submitting a funding request to the New Mexico Supreme Court, which will allow us to acquire the funds to establish the drug court program here in Roosevelt County. The third would be to coordinate with local judicial, law enforcement, and rehabilitation personnel in order to help establish the program. And finally, we would need to establish hire the necessary personnel and establish the drug court program itself in Roosevelt County. Now, supporting the budget increase would primarily be accomplished through showing public community support. And this can be done by writing the local legislature and telling them of our support. We could also write the governor, Susana Martinez, and express our support of both the programs and the budget increase to her. Finally, we could contact local news agencies regarding the issue and ask them to run stories on the topic. It has been done before. There are various newspaper articles, local newspaper articles, expressing the sadness of participants and their families regarding the possibility of a budget cut. The next step would be to submit a request for funding to the New Mexico Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court handles the general budget for all judicial programs within New Mexico, and drug courts being among them. And we would need to include a proposed detailed budget, which will be discussed later in this presentation. Next, it would be wise to coordinate with local judicial, law enforcement, and rehabilitation personnel. And contact local officials and make them aware that the drug court program will be coming to Roosevelt County. This will allow us to identify the personnel most willing to participate, and it will also allow us to coordinate with the local judicial branch and establish an office space. There will be some office space need for the program. We can also coordinate with law enforcement officers who will be participating in the program. This includes police officers and probation personnel. And finally, we can evaluate local drug treatment programs, as we will need to utilize at least one of these programs to treat clients. And finally, we will need to establish the program itself. This will involve hiring the necessary personnel, establishing an eligibility criteria for the program, deciding which offenders are eligible to participate based on perhaps the nature of the crime they committed. We will need to provide the necessary NADC, that's National Association of Drug Courts, training for participating judicial and law enforcement personnel. This is generally a 7-week training program. We will need to establish a treatment plan with a local rehabilitation center. And finally, we will need to begin operations. Now I'd like to go over in a little more detail the costs and benefits of each of these steps. Showing community support for the budget increase will likely incur no monetary expense whatsoever. It cost us only the time it takes to organize the support. The benefits, however, will likely be significant. It may very well result in a statewide budget increase of $1.5 million, as discussed by the Supreme Court. This will allow us to establish a drug court program in Roosevelt County without drawing monetary support away from other pre-existing programs, thereby decreasing the amount of clients treated in their area. It will likely also make it easier to receive approval from the Supreme Court to establish this program because there's more funds available. And finally, at the very least, it may help us avoid an overall decrease in funding, should we show enough support. Once again, the next step being submit a funding request to the New Mexico Supreme Court, and once again, this is likely to incur no monetary cost, simply the time to draw up the proposal. And this will allow us to receive funds from the New Mexico Supreme Court and establish the drug program here in Roosevelt County. Next, we'll be coordinating with local officials. Once again, there's likely to be no monetary cost associated with this. It will allow us for smoother operations once we establish the program. It will help us gain information on the local treatment programs and the law enforcement personnel and judicial personnel who are most likely and most willing to participate in the program itself. And it will give us a chance to familiarize local personnel with the processes associated with drug court programs. And finally, we will have to establish the problem-solving drug court itself in Roosevelt County. Now, the estimated monetary cost of this step is roughly $566,000 per year. While this may seem high initially, one must consider that the national research by the National Association of Drug Courts has shown that for every $1 invested in drug courts, roughly $3 have been saved. This means that for our $566,000 invested, New Mexico may well save over $1.6 million. This includes only the general costs of litigation and incarceration. It does not include medical costs associated with treating drug addicts, nor does it include property damages caused by crimes associated with drug and alcohol addiction. The benefits of this program could be very significant and very widespread. Because these programs have been shown to reduce rates of recidivism and addiction among their clients, it could very well reduce the associated property crime rates within Roosevelt County. It is also very likely to save the lives of not only clients, the drug addicted and alcohol offenders, but also their potential victims who will no longer be put at risk by crimes related to drug addiction and to alcoholism, especially DUI, which in New Mexico is a very large problem. Moving forward, we would like to discuss a more detailed breakdown of the proposed budget. Of the $566,000 proposed, $330,000 of that would go to client treatment. This according to a cost estimate by SanMateoCourts.org, stating that it would take roughly $900 to $2,200 to treat a single client. Therefore, the $330,000 would allow us to treat roughly 150 to 300 clients per year. The rest of the cost goes primarily to hiring the necessary staff. Roughly $50,000 a year would go to hiring a drug court coordinator. Roughly $70,000 per year would go towards a substance abuse evaluator. Roughly $60,000 a year would go towards hiring a treatment court manager. $26,000 a year would go towards a case manager. Finally, $30,000 a year would go towards a substance abuse counselor. Fortunately, drug courts use pre-established judicial infrastructure within a county, therefore it would require no extra buildings to be constructed and no judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, or probation officers to be hired, because they would be staffed out from within the county infrastructure. In conclusion, we would like to review the significant benefits of establishing a drug court program. First and foremost among those being that they save lives. Research has shown these drug courts to have a significant impact in reducing the rate of recidivism and drug use among graduating clients, which in turn reduces crime associated with these addictions in the area in which the court is established. It also saves the lives of people who might have otherwise been victim of crimes such as drunk driving and breaking and entering. It will also likely increase the health of county residents in general by reducing drug activity in the area. Finally, it saves taxpayers money, in this case upwards of $1.6 million, money which could be well used elsewhere, especially in a year where tax revenue is down. Well, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to your decision.